Welcome everybody to
Welcome.
our main webinar, live event for a big announcement this year. Let us show you what we have planned. At Tomorrow.bio, we've now been around for 5-6 years, something like that. Yeah. And of course and we show you what we've been doing so far in a couple of slides, and of course most of you already know that. But as the slide shows, a new era is beginning. Like what we do at Tomorrow.bio will be, a significantly better offering, and we're going to show you today how this is going to work and how you can sign up. First of all, of course, as in every Tomorrow.bio live event, you're more than welcome to ask questions. Today, we would focus on questions that are about this topic, right? As we said last time, we're going to have a separate event, like a general Q&A with Fernando and me, where you can ask all questions that you have about us. Today, it's going to be only questions, so we're going to hardcore prioritize that, questions that are about the topic of today. Let me quickly introduce you, why we're here, why cryopreservation makes sense, what we do, and why this even makes sense in the first place. Some of you might know these types of so-called morbidity or survival curves. What you can see here is basically that over the years, more and more people make it to older age. So the lowest curve that you can see here in dark blue, this was the 1900s. In the 1900s, around 50% or so, maybe a bit more, 50% of people made it to the age of 55 or so. And of course, then the last curve, that's the 2000s, but it's similar in the 2020s. With advances in medicine and so on, more and more people make it to 55. Right now, if someone dies before 55, that would be generally considered a tragedy and very early. The key, of course, is that, or the main problem is that everybody, let's see where you see this kind of red circle on the bottom right, everybody is still dead somewhere between 85 to 95. Right? This over 100 years has not moved, or only moved very, very little. And today there is exactly zero things, there's zero drugs, zero treatments, zero interventions that you can do to extend maximum lifespan. And this is of course why cryopreservation makes sense, because at some point in the future you will probably be able to extend that. You just need to make it there. Cryopreservation, of course, in a nice picture is this. For those of you who might be, the first time here, of course, this is a slide that we've shown many, many times. Of course, it's not as, cinematic in reality, but the concept is the same. You cool someone down to very low temperatures, and then hopefully in the future, medical technology will have advanced enough to allow to cure the underlying condition, the cancer, or whatever it is, and to bring that person back. In other words, it looks like this. On the left side, you see a frozen kidney. On the right side, you see a vitrified kidney. The vitrified kidney, if you warm it up, transplant it back into an animal, it works, kidney works, animal survives, everything is good. And of course, this is what we want to do with whole humans. Over the last years, we've built all the infrastructure to do that. This was one of the very early pictures in 2021, where we built the research institute that is now also a long-term storage facility in Switzerland, set up the company and all of it, right? Now, of course, the building looks like this. Some of you have been there, right? We have comprehensive medical operations suite there, CT scanner for quality assurance, and so on and so on. Of course, we also have medical teams. We now have the most medical teams in the world with very advanced ambulances. This is our generation 3 ambulance here, for example. Again, all over the world, couple teams distributed over Europe, partner teams in building, multiple teams now coming up in the US and already ready in the US. So basically all the fundamental parts that are needed are there. And very importantly, we've been growing a good amount.
Yes. And I think one of the most important things that we have focused in the last few years was basically to build the best cryonics organization in the world. So although for us growth was something important and we have been doing this for very, very long, for us reaching these numbers were secondary to the quality of cryopreservation and to be the best. However, now after all these years, we realized, okay, we already reached these targets. We already, we confidently say that we have the best cryonics organization in the world. Now what's next? And then we realized that the numbers, although they're very, very good compared to any other cryonics organization,
should be much higher.
Should be much higher.
No, I think this is the idea, right? We've grown the most of any organization ever. And while these numbers are not exactly comparable, just to give you an idea, if I can, the next slide, if I basically we would show that while this growth is fine, right? If you look at how all the other organizations grow, right? And again, this is not a 100% correct comparison, because different organizations have different types of contracts, basically, and types of how they sign up people. But from a member perspective, people who have membership with an organization, the blue line here is us, and then this orange line is all other organizations combined in the first 5 years or first 6 years of their existence, right? And as Fernando said, that's great, but our goal, of course, is not just be the largest organization. Our goal is to grow, have so many members that we can fund research from cash flow. This is why we're here, to make this work, right? So the goal is to grow much, much faster. And as Fernando also said, the goal of doing good cryopreservations, this is one of these examples of one of the brain scans that we did after preservation. Some of you joined our event a couple of weeks ago, where we presented the case reports, and of course we do this every year. This is how it's supposed to look, and some of you might remember we're now starting new quality metrics to kind of go for the next frontier. But that kind of is a check mark. But in the end, why are we here, right? Cryopreservation is a tool. Cryopreservation is there because people want to live longer. And when I say longer, I don't mean like to 95 instead of 85. assuming everybody is, healthy and has good quality of life, which I think has a good chance in the future, people might want to live much, much longer, 100 years, 500 years. So cryopreservation is this tool that might get you there, right? It's a stopgap measure, right? But it's not the purpose in itself. The purpose is living longer. So towards that, this new era of Tomorrow.bio is beginning, right? And basically we consider ourselves to be here so that you can be here in 100 years from now, in 200 years from now, in 500 years from now, or maybe longer, right? It was a very personal decision. I'm pretty sure if I'm 499 years old and I have good quality of life, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to have enough to do at that point, because, future societies is going to be probably very exciting, and what you can do will be very exciting. I probably want to live much, much longer. So this is the goal why we're all here. So we've decided to expand towards that goal. So we still, of course, do the very best cryopreservation, and we will push forward with that ever. And now we're going to add on what we call, for lack of a better word, longevity doctors and experts. This is not for, and I'll show you what it's not about in a couple of slides. This is not about, good skin or anything like that. It's purely about lifespan. So it's the part of longevity that currently no one covers. It's not about the health span or the lifespan or the fitness. It's about purely living longer. Right? So all of that stuff here, nutrition and fitness and health span and, microbiomes and all, that's all great and fine, But it is mostly and largely a hype if you talk about living longer. Most organizations that currently brand themselves as longevity organizations are not really about longevity. They're just, living healthy, and then everybody still dies at, 80 or 90. Right? This is not my goal, and hopefully it's not our goal, and hopefully it's not the goal of most of you. So we're going to be extremely focused on lifespan. So none of this stuff, none of the skin care, none of the, gym, none of the healthy aging. Again, all of that is great, and you should do this, right? Going to the gym is good. But this is not our goal. Our goal is lifespan extension, living longer, and then having cryopreservation as the stopgap measure that needs to happen maybe. So for that, we're going to introduce, in addition to our membership service, where you kind of can think about it like this, right? All these longevity experts and longevity doctors from Huberman to, like the German ones, Guido Axmann, and so on, that help people be healthy, what they should do, like optimize a variety of different things, doctors and experts, figuring out what you can do to live, and this is now what we're going to focus on, how to live longer. We're going to exclude everything that is not about living longer. I think this is going to be the unique thing. So it's going to have three big parts. We're going to comprehensively review all the literature, everything that is there that gives us data, what you can do to live longer. Of course, currently, there is no magic pill to do that, right? If there would be a magic pill, you wouldn't need cryopreservation. But there's still stuff that you can do, from optimization of your current metabolic profile to fixing problems that lead to dying early, like high blood pressure and you name it, right? So for all of these subtopics, we now have in-house people, the first person we're going to introduce on our webpage, that will exclusively focus on giving, reviews and providing reviews on that. We will also have personal one-on-one interactions, from consultations, kind of in quotation marks. Of course, these people are not all doctors. We have doctors on the team, but also people who are not doctors, but experts in this space, or at least not medical doctors, but PhDs, for example. So it's not like in a replacement to your doctor or anything like that. It is more so a summary of what are the best things that you can do right now, and helping you in a one-on-one to adhere to that kind of, maybe lifestyle or whatever change it must be. But again, never for the lifestyle purpose, never for the purpose to run a faster mile or run a faster marathon or have nicer skin or, look better next year or anything like that. But what can you do to live longer? And last but not least, there's going to be a large network of providers from whole body MRIs to blood values or whatever that we're going to build all over Europe initially and then in the US as well, where if there is something that you could do or should do from prevention or whatever, we have a trusted partner that where you can do that. Because the goal is to basically cover you A to Z. Like we call this internally, we got you.
You got you.
Like, so to have this idea, if people sign up with us, right? In the past, people signed up with us and then, that they had, they were members with us, right?
Yes.
And once in a while we interacted, you might have come to one of our events or whatever, but pretty much you kind of only needed us at the time of cryopreservation, right? You only needed us when you actually die and when you need us. And now this is kind of changing.
Yes. So this was one of the things that we knew since the beginning. It was something that we had to focus on, right? Yeah. The average age of our members is 37 years old, and hopefully they will need us in the next 5 decades in the future. But I think the most important thing is that how can we make sure that they will only need us, hopefully most of them, only five decades,
the
4 or 5
very
decades.
last amount.
Exactly.
Like not as late as possible.
And then we thought this long gap that we have between now and when they actually going to need cryopreservation is something that we should work on. And we have been working on this and discussing about this for the last couple of years until we finally decided to launch our longevity initiative for all our members.
Yeah. And we don't want to call it, like, there might be a better name in the future, because longevity initiative sounds like we're also going to be one of the longevity clinics that have sprung up everywhere. And now there's another one that takes care of your skin. I mean, not only skin, of course, but kind of that stuff. The focus here will be really on life extension and lifespan extension. Of course, I have repeated that now 6 times. But this is very important for us, that this is not going to be... there will be a clear separation, and if someone reaches out to us and says, "Hey, listen, how can I bench press more kilos?" Right?
Yeah.
We're not going to be the right people for that. But we're going to focus on actually living longer. Yeah. So basically now our interaction with you is going to start, except for of course events. If you want to, it starts much earlier. It basically starts when you sign up with us, right? So let's say someone says, my doctor told me that I have high blood pressure. Then we're going to have a comprehensive review of what to do for high blood pressure. What is the best scientific basis to do for high blood pressure? Or someone says, listen, I'm already fit. My doctor says everything is fine. What is the next step that I can optimize? Like, for example, what are... there's an acceptable range that doctors usually look at for blood values, but then there's an ideal range for blood values. So there's going to be a review about what is the ideal value. What should you aim for if you have kind of optimized everything already? What's the optimal value that you want to aim for if your goal is to live longer? Right. So that's going to be basically the absolute focus, and it's going to start from sign up. Then at some point, you might be cryopreserved, because extending maximum lifespan is very tough, but we definitely don't want you to die earlier, right? And then, of course, we got you until revival, which, of course, is then done by the foundations in Switzerland, but which, of course, is part of our structure. And, of course, we're not doing this only as a side thing because it makes sense for living longer. It's also an important part for cryopreservation. Basically, to move from this, as much as possible away from this frozen kidney, kind of, to the well vitrified and fully usable kidney, right? So how this connects basically is a couple of points. Like here's a few examples, right? To improve cryopreservation, if you have a better vasculature, if your blood vessel system looks better, doesn't have any calcifications, right? Then cannulation is easier, right? If you don't have any calcifications in vessels, going up to the brain, then the perfusion of the brain is better, right? Very importantly, there's still cryopreservation. It's always important to remember, this is an active research project, right? Every year there's advances being made in how cryopreservation should be done, how the quality of preservation can be improved. So the longer you live, the more time you give us to improve the procedure. And last but not least, of course, it's very important, or like as much as you can impact that, to not have dementia, right? Like, if you get dementia early, that sucks for people who want to be cryopreserved, right? So all of these things, living healthy, being healthy, having good blood vessels to no dementia, to just living longer to give us more time, it also helps the quality of cryopreservation to live longer in a healthy way. So how does this work? So it will be a fully dedicated team that takes care of that, to not distract from cryopreservation, right? Of course, cryopreservation, pushing it forward, will remain a very, very important, if not the most important thing for many, many decades, right? Again, to repeat it one more time, it will be about lifespan only, and it will be free to everybody who has a Tomorrow.bio membership. So this doesn't come as an add-on or as an extra thing or like whatever. It is just part of your membership going forward. The rollout will be, initially there will be an alpha and a beta phase, right? You can sign up actually for that on the wait list right now. So scan the QR code if you're interested to be one of these early testers. Then it will be rolled out for our lifetime members, for our annual members, first these in 2 groups, and then for everybody. But of course, this is not going to be like, a multi-year thing or something like that. We plan to roll out this in the next couple of months. So hopefully by the middle of the year, everybody should have already access. That's not an absolute promise, but that's definitely the plan. The alpha and beta phases should start even in the next couple of 1, 2, 3 months. So sign up for that. So this is, I think, the biggest change that we've made so far. So that's why we're saying a new era of Tomorrow.bio begins, where we're not only saying, you sign up with us and then at some point you need us for the best-in-class cryopreservation, but more so you sign up with us and then we help you on that journey for the value in the end, to live and be around in 100 years from now. So now we're more than happy to answer all your questions you might have on that. And if you go to our webpage, the new webpage with that is already live. You can sign up to the waitlist there, or you can sign up onto the waitlist with the QR code that you saw. And now, without further ado, we're going to answer all questions. So let's see. All right. If, of course, anybody has questions, or maybe everything is clear. All right, let's see. Okay, and by the way, because I already see questions that are slightly maybe not totally about this topic, so it should definitely be about this topic. Again, we're going to do a fully independent Q&A session a bit down the line, where you can answer any question that you might have. But this today is going to be about this very topic. All right, one question is, have you considered offering individualized genome analysis with a focus on longevity? So we're not going to offer any testing services ourselves, right? Genome analysis would be one of those, right? We're also not starting to do blood tests ourselves or anything like that. It's more so we're going to have a review. What is the best whole genome sequencing provider worldwide out there that you can use? Right, and then you would need to go there and then potentially also discuss these topics with your doctor and so on. So it's more so we're going to tell you what to optimize for, right? But not necessarily providing those services ourselves, because we don't want to become a genome sequencing company or like an MRI company or a blood testing company. We're a cryopreservation company. We're a company that is here to let you live as long as possible. So services will be done by partners.
And I think we also should aim to be, in the next few years, the company that everyone comes if they really wanted to extend their lifespan. And that's basically what's our vision for the future in this next stage, moving forward.
Yeah, we want to attract people who say, I want to live indefinitely. Right? The study that we did a few years ago, that we have referenced, of course, a few times, that comprehensive sentiment study in the US and in Europe said 26% of population say, I want to live indefinitely. So of course, indefinitely, I would argue, is much, much longer than currently possible. So this is our target audience. and it's a combination of living longer in this life, in quotation, right? Then, of course, be cryopreserved, because why would you want to die at some point, right? Or be dead forever. And then we do everything, and this is, of course, also always an important part. We do the research, we support the research, we conduct the research ourselves that lays the groundwork to figure out how to revive you in the future. Of course, that's going to be a long time potentially, but it's still prudent to start thinking about it and work on it to some degree. Will you be raising membership rates to pay for this longevity stuff? No, we will not. It's always possible that we raise membership rates, but we will never do this for people who are already signed up with us, except for inflation adjustment. So when you sign up with us, that membership rate is locked in, right? Again, we adjust it for inflation. We haven't yet, but at some point there might be so much inflation accumulation that we kind of are required to. But apart from that, we don't do that, and there will not be a membership rate increase for this for everybody who is signed up. For the future, we don't have a membership rate increase planned, but that might always happen.
And I think that another important thing to note is we do this also to increase the value of our membership, right? It's not only to have other services to sell, but also to make sure that our members get the maximum out of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Is this going to be a medical service? Do you not need licenses for that? No, it's absolutely not going to be a medical service, right? So it's not going to be, as I said before, none of these services will be provided from us, right? So be it the genome sequencing, be it the MRI, be it any medical advice, right? So you still need to go to your doctor. But of course, normal doctors, for example, when we talk about these blood values, normal doctors that you go to, even longevity doctors sometimes, they say, your blood value, your LDL is in range. But then again, there might be new research that says, in certain circumstances, your LDL should be super low, much lower than what is the, in quotation marks, normal range. What we're going to do, we're going to review and tell you what is the ideal range. And of course, this is just an example. We will do this for all the things that are there, that have good scientific backing and are known to increase lifespan. All right, by the way, I might filter some questions that might not be totally about this topic. But again, you can more than happy to answer them in an AMA next time. All right, let's see. Membership rate we had. I'm worried about wasting the already scarce resources we have on cryo research. I thought you agreed that lifespan research wasn't going to save any time soon. Absolutely. So there's not going to be any research on our end, at least not research to find new drugs or anything. That's a bottomless pit basically. But summarizing that research is, in our mind, a very, very strong net positive. When we showed this curve, this growth curve initially, right? So we've been by far the fastest organization that made it to 1,000 members, right? 1,000 people signed up. But 1,000 people signed up is peanuts, right? To give cryopreservation a good and better chance to actually work in the end, we need to figure out how we can build something, how we can present cryopreservation in a way that 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, at some point 100,000 people sign up, right? The field is very, very, very small. So if you would continue improving how the field has improved over the last decades, I'm not saying then we're lost, but I would feel much, much more confident that when there would be 20,000 or maybe even 100,000 at some point people are signed up for cryopreservation, so that we would have 100,000 members, where now there would be enough membership fees so that we can fund research out of the membership fee. And of course, now for argument's sake, that will be a very, very sustainable research funding methodology over the next decades. And we have decided that for that, there needs to be a bigger change, right? Like, again, we're growing fast, but we have not figured out how to grow fast enough to have a chance to getting to 100,000 anytime soon. So this trade-off that we have now hire some extra people, and again, it's a kind of a dedicated team. So it's not like we're taking from our current resources, neither from research nor from operations, nor from our SST teams or anything like that. So it's a dedicated team that allows us to very likely, hopefully at least, attract significantly more members with this narrative of we're here, we're the organization for those who want to live longer. Not for those who want to be cryopreserved, but for those who want to live longer. And then cryopreservation is, of course, a part of it and an important part of it. In the end, we as not as an organization only, as a field, as the whole field of cryopreservation, as the field of people who say, I want to live significantly longer, we need to grow. Otherwise, I think, nothing is impossible. But again, I think everybody would feel significantly more confident if the field
and not only that,
bigger.
right? With economy of scales, we can also drastically reduce the cost of cryopreservation itself, which has been one of the biggest barriers for lots of people to decide to sign up simply because they could not afford it.
Yeah, very importantly as well, right? This is always one of the big goals. Like as you remember, the 3 goals of Tomorrow Bio is make cryopreservation cheaper, right? Make it more accessible, more teams and so on, and making it more affordable, right? And the making it more affordable part largely depends on having way more people signed up. Right, let me see. Okay, someone said, I have a BMI of 45. I do not wish to lose weight. Thoughts? Talk to your doctor. No specific thoughts to individual health problems. Will you offer therapeutic services like massages for stress reduction? No, we will not. Even though stress reduction is good, right? So, but we will not offer any services ourselves. We will just review what are the best methodologies to, for example, stress reduction. And then if someone says, I have a lot of stress, right, then there is a review that says, these are the best methodologies, for example. Doesn't this dilute your original goal of cryopreservation? I'm concerned that through this attention shifts away from making cryopreservation better and better. No. So, I mean, in theory, again, that's why it's a dedicated team. In theory, everything new thing you do dilutes your attention to a bit. But again, my goal is, if you think about it, if we really want to talk high level, the goal is not technically to make cryopreservation better itself because cryopreservation should be better. It's what can we do that people are around in the future, right? And for that, you need to make cryopreservation better, but you also need to grow cryopreservation, right? So if we do another 10 years or another 20 years even of incremental improvement, that's great, but it's not changing the game. If you look back before we came around, the field of cryopreservation has not fundamentally changed over the last 20 years when vitrification agents, even more than 20 years, when vitrification agents were introduced, right? There was, of course, incremental change and so on, but the basically, if cryopreservation as a field continues as it does, I'm uncomfortable with the speed of improvement overall. So I would not say strongly we're on a good track, right, as a field. So basically new stuff needs to be done, new stuff needs to be tried, right? Many years ago, many decades ago, people thought a lot of people are going to sign up immediately to cryopreservation, right? This never happened. There was also this idea that all these billionaires are going to come and put tremendous amounts of money into cryopreservation. None of this has happened, right? So without fundamental change in the field, it's uncomfortable that the incremental change might not be enough.
I think that it's also, it helps us to move our organization out of our comfort zone. As we mentioned before, we know by all the data that we already have that the quality for cryopreservation is already the best. So what else can we do here that help us and help the field move forward? And that's why we decided to do this strategic change in direction, just to make sure that we don't get comfortable and that we can help the whole field grow.
Yeah, And I think we can still improve, of course, stuff in cryopreservation, like the optimization of electron microscopy is, I think it's going to be a topic for a very long time for us. But the hope would be that with this, with more members, we can have more teams. With more members, we can fund research from cash flow, which again then helps improving cryopreservation. Basically, I don't want to be, and we don't want to be happy with the kind of incremental and linear growth of how cryopreservation as a field has improved over the last decades, right? So fundamental change is needed, right? Isn't it a problem for people with term life insurance to live longer? I mean, I hope not. Even if I have term life insurance, I still want to live longer, right? I don't want to die in that term limit, right? Everybody who signs up with term life insurance always, of course, needs to remember term life insurance is just for a time. It only protects a time. There still needs to be a plan. How would you fund your cryopreservation after the term of that term life insurance runs out, right? And so we have this kind of reminder and planning thing that 10 and sometimes 20 years before a term life insurance runs out, we're going to reach out to our members and say, hey, listen, your term life insurance is going to run out. You really should start thinking. Of course, we're happy to help. Start thinking about how would you fund your cryopreservation once this runs out. So I don't think this is an issue. I think everybody who has term life insurance still would like to live as long as possible, and then we can help as much as we can to figure out how to fund your cryopreservation after.
On a side note, we also understand that this is a problem. This is also a project that we have been working on the last couple of years to try to fix this issue. We may have some news this year, but not yet official. So that's why, if there is any change, we will let you guys know. But yeah, we understand that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to find questions that I haven't answered yet. Unfortunately, this is a bit genome. We have answered that. Are you going to link longevity metrics in the Tomorrow.bio app? Initially, no. So we're not gonna. At some point in the future, we might integrate this. But to be fair, the Tomorrow.bio app needs to launch first and actually be live, which we're getting very close. But this is still.
We promise you, it's there.
Yes, it's very close. So that of course has been a bit of pet peeve of ours that this has not been. But to be fair, this positive and negative. This false positives and false negative detection is a difficult topic to figure out well, but it's definitely coming. But it's not going to be initially with any health metrics in there. All right. Right. I signed up for Cryonics precisely so I could live a more libertine law. I took up smoking and drinking. I mean, I hope you didn't. But of course, personal health decisions are totally yours, right? So none of this is, of course, going to be a thing that someone is supposed to do or should do, right? It's totally up to you how you would like to live your life, and then why you sign up for cryopreservation. All right. Why do I need your help to read systematic reviews and meta-analysis? It seems like this is a plus personal advice in the service. Yeah, it is. To be fair, most people don't read systematic reviews and anything like that. So when I say we're going to create reviews, right, it's not like we're going to write we might in fact publish scientific and published reviews as well, but it's going to be significantly more. In addition to that, significantly more for people who do not have the time to read systematic reviews and go through the literature and keep up with everything constantly. So it's going to be more for everybody. But we might in fact add systematic reviews as well. Does the 15K lifetime credit apply even if the cryopreservation total price drops in the future? In the 200K price tax included, or is VAT on top of that? Any tax questions and VAT questions really depend on the country. Since I read the question, even though it's not really about this topic today, but now I read it, so now I need to answer it. If the price in the future drops for cryopreservation, then yes, that lifetime prepayment still applies. Of course, it's always possible that the the price for cryopreservation at its current standard drops, but then there will be new technology that might be significantly more expensive. Intermediate temperature storage is, for example, one of them that we had talked about a lot in the past, that might be significantly more expensive in the past. And then you can decide if you want to, in quotation marks, use the extra funds for that. By the way, maybe the team can help me answer remove the questions that we have already answered, because it's getting a bit confusing what we have already answered. With this new program, if I get a cancer diagnosis, would you also help me find the best doctors or the latest treatment options? So we will not have that capability in day one, but there are organizations that already do that in some countries. So we would, for example, have a list of those. Right? So for example, there is an organization here called BetterDoc that is there, that if you have a complex disease, they help you find the right doctor that is super optimized and super specialized on that. It's possible that in the future we're still going to do this internally, right? Where we would say, okay, we put it at the time to figure out, for a certain type of cancer, like for example lung cancer that a lot of people might have, at a certain age at least, that these are the worldwide best programs and best doctors and best hospitals. So that might very well be a thing that we will add. It will probably not be day one, but that's the type of thinking. What can you do at any point in time to optimize to live as long as you can?
And this is going to be an interactive process. Every time we do these new versions, we will also update the product as well. So this is not going to be one stagnated V1 that we're going to launch now. So the idea is that this is exactly the reason why we're doing this, is to be out of our comfort zone and to make sure that we help our members to live much, much longer.
Yeah. At the moment, you have a very clear profile as the cryopreservation company. That's a question. And you get a lot of respect for that. Adding longevity generally makes it unclear. Yes, so we're going to still, of course, do everything to maintain that profile. But I think it's always very important to remember, people who join these calls, they're a minority of a minority. So usually these people who are in these calls and are very interactive with us, right, and join our in-person events, right, it's a very small percentage of people who sign up with us. Whereas we need to think about what can we do for these people, right? And these are usually evangelists, and that's why we do these talks, right? Because it's super awesome to talk, and that's why we reach out and say, hey, can you provide feedback? Give us a call and tell us what we can do differently or better, and so on. But in the end, I will go back to this point that if the field of cryopreservation doesn't grow by at least an order of magnitude, if not 2 orders of magnitude, then there will only be incremental growth, right? And incremental growth is probably, I can't guarantee it, maybe in the future everybody can be revived under any circumstance. But I said it many times, I want to wake up in the future and the doctors or whoever wakes me up will then say, you could have stopped improving 20 years before you did. And I'm going to say, this is amazing. Okay, awesome, cool, thank you. But I want to make damn sure that I err on that side. So since now I still have time to improve stuff, and we as an organization have still time to improve stuff, we can still make these changes to what can we do now that in 10 years from now, we are so much bigger that we can fund more research, we can support other research organizations, we can fund academic science and have a separate organization that, a foundation that funds just science and so on and so on. But again, as Fernando said, we cannot be comfortable with the fastest growth that any organization ever had. But if you look in absolute terms, 1,000 people signed up, it should be 10,000. It should be 100,000. But that's really tough. So we need to make these changes. And again, don't expect us, of course, to start talking about, have all these meetings about longevity now constantly. We will, of course, have these meetings. But cryopreservation will still be, from a research allocation standpoint, by far the largest point. But, of course, it will likely help us a lot getting more people into the field of cryopreservation and get the overall message, right? The message basically is not be cryopreserved. And I think if everybody thinks here about you, like no one, I sometimes say no one wants to be cryopreserved, right? They just want to be cryopreserved if the alternative is cremation. So the messaging will more and more, I think, switch, and I think this will attract a much larger audience if you say, we're here to let you live as long as possible.
Cryopreservation, in the end, people, we like to remember, to remind everyone that cryopreservation, in the end, is a tool. It's not the end, it's just a mean to extend your lifespan. And that's basically the message that we wanted to spread around, and also to make the topic itself easier to introduce to other people, right? So who doesn't want to live or extend their lifespan if they can?
Yeah. All right. When do you expect to provide the service in the US? So the cryopreservation service, of course, is already available in the US. And this service will be immediately also available in the US, right? And the cryopreservation, of course, in the US is currently, we have teams in 3 states or locations, like dispatch locations in 3 states. So if you're in a different state, you can still sign up with us. But we would, of course, tell you that there is currently no SST team in your state or close by. So, of course, they can fly to you, but we always want to make sure that people understand that, you know, a team might be X amount of however many miles away. To be fair, it's not like other organizations going to have likely a team in your state. Unfortunately, this is very uncommon. But you can still sign up with us for cryopreservation. We just would tell you that. And this new kind of extension of maximum lifespan service will already be available in the US as well. If the goal is marketing is marketing to grow the membership, why not just do direct marketing for those close to death already? And now I lost the question because it moved. Like at retirement fairs and so on. That's very difficult, unfortunately, for a lot of reasons. For ethical reasons, for logistics reasons, like, meaning the average age when someone is interested in cryopreservation is usually relatively young age. Because if you're 80 or 70 right now, usually you have a relatively low quality of life. And in that age group right now, and you also, I think, I'm not sure if we fully know why, but usually these people are less interested in cryopreservation. Right, so you need to talk. You have a lot of, if you talk to 1,000 people, you only hit a very small amount of people who are interested in that age. Right,
it's actually quite surprising for us once we figure out about this.
The thing that we currently think is the most likely case is that, again, if you're 80 right now, you don't have that great quality of life, just statistically speaking. So people are a bit, I don't know if I want to continue this for like another 20 years or another 100 years. And then the other reason might be that these people, even though they might not call themselves religious, they might have grown up with religion, right? And somewhere back in their head, they're like, still, maybe, if I die, I'm fine. I just go to heaven, right? These are slightly hypotheses, or like not fully proven, but this is currently our best guess with some data supporting why this is very tough to market to that demographic. Yeah. All right. I'm still trying to find. By the way, you can also up and down vote questions. So if there's anything that I have not answered and you feel like that should be definitely answered, feel free to upvote it. Will you offer this life extension service for pets, like chickens? Great question. Yeah, I don't. No, we will not do any pet longevity. There's companies that do pet longevity, so definitely reach out to them. I don't know if they cater to chickens, but we will focus fully on humans. All right. But if you don't raise membership rates, and this is a separate team, how could the cost for this not come away from Cryonics services? So luckily, we have a good amount of external financial supporters. So it's not like we spend all of our money and always live on the edge, right? Where we need membership fees to fund next month's operations. It's more so that we have, from investors to donors, people who provide funding for cryopreservation. Now, we could, of course, spend all of that money right now on improving cryopreservation. But just improving cryopreservation would not help us, at least it wouldn't change the growth trajectory fundamentally. So in a couple of years, right, we always have a couple of years of money on our bank account, right? In a couple of years, we would have incrementally better cryopreservation. It's not like we have 100 million, right? So we could not change cryopreservation fundamentally with the money we have, but we can incrementally improve it. And of course, that's what we've been doing for the last 5 years or 6 years. But if we now would spend all of that money much faster, we would be here in a couple of years, incrementally having it improved a bit. But then the organization would be financially less stable. Whereas if we put a small chunk, and just to give you an order of magnitude, it's way less, it's less than 5% probably that we're spending on, somewhere between 5 and 10% that we're spending on this, maybe, right now at least. Like it's a very small chunk. If our thesis is correct, that over time lets us attract a much, much larger membership amount, then the amount of additional members after 1, 2, or 3 years offsets or it allows us to now start significant investing in research, offsetting this or much superseding the amount of research outcome that we could have ever had. Right, so in the long run, I think it is absolutely crucial that we figure out a way of how to make cryopreservation more mainstream. Not mainstream as in 10 million people per country will sign up, but mainstream as in we're on track to grow to 100,000 members in a reasonable amount of time. Right, and again, if you look at any growth trajectory of the past, currently as a field, we are super not on track for that. Our growth currently is also not on track for that, right? If we would continue, we are definitely on track to be the largest organization in the world by membership numbers, right? This is just a matter of time until we're there, but that's quite a far away from 100,000 members, right? And even from 10,000 members. Right. There's a lot of questions that are probably very serious questions. So I'm going to skip those, but you're more than welcome to join again on the AMA, where we're happy to entertain these questions as well. Are there any lifespan interventions you can endorse right now that are not covered by standard longevity clinics? By good longevity clinics, I think probably most of them are covered. But then again, most longevity clinics. So when you look at the longevity clinic market, right, most of longevity clinics come from one of two sides. They either come from the wellness side, and beauty side, right? In the past they did like Botox and fillers and all of that stuff, right, and skincare, and now they also do longevity. And then most of the other longevity clinics come from the fitness and performance and sports medicine side. There's very few longevity clinics that actually do real, what I would say, anything that extends maximum lifespan. They are out there, but they're just tremendously expensive, right? So we're going to integrate that into a membership that already exists. So if someone already has a good longevity clinic or is a patient at a good longevity clinic, I don't think we can provide that much additional value. But I'm pretty sure that 99% of people in this call, and definitely 99% of the people who are signed up with us, do not. And that's the idea, to kind of combine these two services under one logic. Right. By the way, if you see any questions that is definitely about this topic, feel free to upvote it, and then I'm happy to answer it. So any questions about death with dignity and so on, which are currently highly upvoted, but those would belong to another webinar, or reach out to us. We can never be involved in that, right? So in any death with dignity thing, we cannot be involved ourselves. So you would need to reach out to these organizations For legal and moral reasons, we ourselves cannot advise or be involved in any capacity there. Would it be correct to say that the longevity thing is mostly a marketing tool to grow the membership so that cryo research can be funded? It's definitely a part of, so it's more so that we need to figure out a way to grow to be able to fund cryo research in the future. And the longevity thing is currently, apart from some other things that we will try in 2026, is currently one of the best bets that we have that might be the linchpin of why people, how to communicate the topic so that more people decide to sign up. And in addition, it has these effects that it does help the cryopreservation quality. But of course, it's a bit of an indirect thing, and you might need to stay with it for a long time until the effects at cryopreservation are true. But we sometimes get these questions: wouldn't it make more sense if you would be cryopreserved earlier, have a more healthy body, and so on? And I always say, absolutely not. The effect of living 10 years longer is much higher, much bigger, because you have 10 more years of having the cryopreservation technology get better than be cryopreserved in a more healthy body or in a younger body. So that is definitely an effect, but it's also definitely like a large chunk of the reasoning why we're doing this, to figure out how to provide more value, to then have more people say, I'm doing this tomorrow. There's a reason for me to do this tomorrow. Do I need to join the longevity program waitlist if I'm already a Tomorrow.bio member? You do not. You just need to join it if you want to be one of the alpha or beta testers, right? So we're going to roll this out initially with a select group of people to try it out, to optimize it,
to get feedback.
Right, to get feedback and so on. So if you want to be part of that, then you need to put yourself on the waitlist. But you do not. At some point, it will be available for everybody, and then everybody will just be able to use it from the membership dashboard and so on. So it's not a requirement. How are you going to handle security, privacy side of sharing, storing personal medical data, test results, and so on, which members will have to share with you? Basically, however, in that country, it's legally required. So in Europe here, it would basically be GDPR compliant for medical data. And then, so all the rights that gives you, you would have, right? And medical data, of course, has a higher degree of rights and a higher degree of protection. So basically just compliant in whatever country you are, at least in the regions where we offer it. There's risk that adding more services employees can bankrupt the company over decades, centuries. To what extent is this taken into account? So over decades and centuries, yes, in theory, everything you do more. Like every additional person we hire, right, increases the probability of going bankrupt, but more in a theoretical sense, right? So we run Tomorrow.bio in the following way. We always want to have multiple years of funding on our account, right? So we like to spend as much as we can to grow as fast as we can and to improve quality by, for example, funding research and conducting research ourselves as fast as we can. And now, if this multiple years of funding should ever drop below that kind of our threshold, then we would start reducing cost, meaning we would not fund as much research anymore, we would not start new longevity programs and so on, to basically go back to where we would now be break even on a monthly basis, and then kind of wait it out until someone externally gives us more money, like either other donors or investors or whatever, right? And then we would start funding more again to again grow faster and put more money into research. So while in theory this happens, this has happened for many years, right? Of course, we hired more people on SST teams, we hired more engineers and so on, but always under this guiding principle that we will never get close, so that if something bigger happens, we're suddenly in trouble. So Meaning, I don't know.
We are financially very conservative.
Yes,
basically.
for like exactly. We're very conservative, so that we can always wait it out. For example, if there's let's say there's another big financial crisis coming and no external funding is available anymore, then we want to always have enough time and enough money basically to just wait this out until more external funding becomes available. So Tomorrow Bio is basically at a state that if for whatever reason no external funding is possible anymore, we could just stop spending, right? And then would just live off membership fees, right? And then wait it out until this situation changes. All right. Will consultations help customers improve their mental brain performance? Would be a great niche not currently covered broadly by clinics. So this will likely also not be our focus. Not because I don't think this is a great thing. It's just so that brain performance and it's in mental health. It's not going to be our strong suit. Like there might not be a service. It might not be a service of many longevity clinics, but there's definitely services out there that focus on that. So we don't want to dilute ourselves, as some people have said here today. We don't want to do everything, right? We want to do one additional thing that we think is an absolute net positive, right? But not everything that one could do. So this will likely be, unfortunately, not something that we will ever offer. What is the process of determining which longevity information or treatment works best? Who will you consult? Max Moore? We will. Oh, so maybe that was a question from Max Moore, and not will you consult Max Moore? Could be either. So the only data we will consult is basically studies, right? And of course, there's a hierarchy of studies and informations, right? So in an ideal world, most of the information we would discuss and so on would be randomized controlled clinical trials, right? There might be some things that doesn't have that level of evidence right now, and then when we say something about it, we would mark it as lower level of confidence. But mostly it will be studies and high quality large studies. Ideally, Cochrane meta reviews and so on, if there are any. All right. Let me see if there's anything more. Since we're kind of running a bit out of time, now is a good time to ask your last questions, and keep all the questions about other topics for our AMA that will come up at some point. There's someone asked you if I will judge them. I will definitely not judge you. Lifestyle choices are totally yours, and you decide how you want to do it. Will you be obligated to share this medical information with the insurance company you partner with? Nope. No. Are there any treatments you're going to recommend to extend the lifespan beyond 100 years? If not, what's the quantitative goal you take for consultations? So if I would know anything that would allow anybody to live to more than 100 years, we would definitely start a subsidiary that does that, right? Because that would be really good business in itself. And would probably help us fund a lot of cryopreservation research. But unfortunately, this doesn't exist. So the quantitative nature of how to measure the success of this is going to be initially quite difficult. I don't think we will be able to initially measure this in these are the amount of extra years that someone has gotten. It will be more initially, at least, qualitative. In, let's say, 2-3 years, we might have learned enough of how people engage with this and how the service, based on feedback, has evolved and has improved, that we will be able to add quantitative, some quantitative measurement. Day one, there will not be a quantitative measurement, at least not something that we have planned, because it is very, very difficult. I mean, there's a reason why all the longevity biotech companies are working with surrogate parameters like epigenetic clocks and so on, because there is no really good quantitative measurement of maximum lifespan. In which countries will the lifespan partners be based? So we will roll this out country by country. Initially, it will be likely by where we have the most members, in the regions where we have the most members. So on our webpage, you see where we have the most members, and we update this once in a while. We probably should update this soon again. Now that we have 1,000 members, I don't think we have updated it after that. So it will be by in quotation marks where the most members are located in which countries and which regions. What health steps have you personally taken as a result of looking into longevity? If you're comfortable sharing, of course. Someone said last week that I look like 28. I don't think that's true, but a very good quantitative measure, by the way. So there's a couple of things. So I do gym, right? There's recently a paper came out that said high intensity training is much more efficient than zone 2 training. So I do that, right? Then I have like a certain amount of supplements that some people make jokes for me about here in the office, but it's nothing crazy. It's like stuff with good evidence. I mean, we live in Berlin, so everybody should probably take vitamin D, right? In winter at least. Definitely if you have a deficiency, which I had right before starting, right? So that's that. Then there's relatively good food. And then there's everything where I have real downside, you do blood values once and you see where you actually have a problem or like a non-ideal thing. So for example, I have genetically relatively high blood fat values. So I do something about that. And then there's a longer list. Actually, maybe I'll write a blog post about this, like all the things that I do, as one of the first things we publish. Not because anybody should take this over, but just to give a feeling of what one might be able to do. Do you expect some surprising synergies of both fields, cryo and supportive longevity, when cryotech becomes more mature, like preparing humans' bodies better for cryo? Yeah, I briefly said that in the introduction or in the slides, right? If you're healthy at old age, right, there's a lot of effects where your cryopreservation is better. So one very tangible one is that, as you might know, we cannulate the ascending aorta, so the main vessel in the body, and perfuse cryoprotective agents through that main vessel. Now, that main vessel can be calcified in old age, right? Now, if it's calcified, we try to move the cannula somewhere else and to not cannulate through the calcification. But of course, other parts of the vessels might also be calcified. The risk if you do that, if you would cannulate through and there's a calcification, is that you might dislodge one of these, calcifications that might then form emboli, right? Where then part of the brain would not be perfused well. If you don't have that then there's no issue, right? If you have calcifications in the rest of the body, parts of your brain and parts of the body might not be perfused that well. Right? So there's a lot of these effects, and then, as I said, the main one is just living longer, right? Giving more time to the field of research in cryopreservation to improve. So there's a lot of these synergies, and now that we do this, we might discover a couple more, right? But there's definitely a very high level, or like a good chunk of important synergies that we already do know. Emil and Fernando, out of curiosity, are you both planning to be cryopreserved yourself? Absolutely.
Yes.
Otherwise, I think no one, I would not have done this, and maybe you also wouldn't have
Why
done
would
this.
I have been doing this to start with?
No, so this has been a really long, I wrote like a blog post very in the beginning, like in 2020 or maybe even 2019, that you find still on our blog and my blog, right? Like why I'm doing this. I just really don't want to die, and I definitely don't want to be dead, and I definitely want to see the future. So it's very much an intrinsic motivation. As a long-time extreme hobbyist in health span optimization, I found behavioral changes yield the most benefits. Do you agree? how will you approach this? So behavioral changes definitely do a lot. And of course, you now need to be separating a bit between health span and lifespan, right? For lifespan, there's also behavioral things that you can do, but it's mostly so that you shouldn't do anything that's bad. You know, for all the people who said they took up smoking, right? That's bad. That's reducing your maximum lifespan by a lot, right? So if you're a smoker, like, you should really consider not smoking, and if you care about living longer. So behavioral changes is definitely something. We will not super go into behavioral changes because behavioral change is just really, really tough. I mean, behavioral changes, like your doctor has been advising people for many, many decades, or like years in some cases, well, in some cases decades definitely, to do behavioral changes. Behavioral changes are hard. We're gonna, of course, have...
We keep telling people here in the office, stop smoking.
That as well. And
they don't stop smoking. They never stop smoking.
So behavioral changes are really, really tough. So we're gonna, of course, write about it. So we're gonna say what kind of gym is the best, right? But then people would need to take it up. Maybe we're gonna have some accountability, counters down the line or something like that. But in the end, I think it would be mostly up to you to take that information and make it work. That at least would be the initial stages. Maybe down the line there's going to be more. Cryopreservation is a long-term process. My main concern is what financial plan the company has to cover the cost of keeping people frozen or cryopreserved for centuries. So as a reminder, for those of you, of course, who have been with us for longer, they know, but for people who might be new to our organization, we are not involved in keeping people in cryostasis. That is done by separate foundations in Switzerland that are absolutely maximally optimized on being financially stable for centuries, and every optimization part you can do is done there, right? So if anything happens, if you're in cryostasis and then 100 years from now, or like whatever, how many years from now, 50 years from now, maybe when you go into cryostasis, if anything happens to tomorrow, nothing happens to you in cryostasis. You're at a foundation, at a non-profit foundation in Switzerland that is purely there to keep you in stasis and has financial models and investment thesis and strategies that are all optimized for maximal safety and longevity.
In the end, we are a service provider, and our responsibility ends once our members are inside the door.
Yeah, not because we want to get rid of this responsibility, but because it's a horrible idea to be in cryostasis with a company. Companies, statistically speaking, are not good at being around for 100 years. We plan to be, we're going to do everything that we can to do it, but foundations, especially Swiss foundations, are much, much better at that. So it's an optimization that we had from day one, like for a very long time. And I think this makes absolute sense. And other organizations, by the way, also do it like that. This is not something that we came up with. We learned this from another organization. I think it makes absolute sense to have it like that.
Check in our website if you want to know how our organization structure works.
Ah, yeah, it's on our webpage, exactly. We explain it there. We want this blog post about my health. Yeah, okay, cool. Coming up, I'll take one of the next weekends, I'm going to write it. If the goal is to help people live indefinitely, won't it make sense at some point to evaluate people's health in-house, like tests, than to rely on external reports? For that we're not large enough, right? So you need to remember we have members all over Europe and also in the US, right? Like in-house is it's not something we can deliver, right? We're not large enough of an organization for that. It's also not our core, right? So there's other organizations that can do that just do that, right? And we don't want to don't want to spread ourselves too thin. So with the amount of stuff we're doing in this field, I think this makes absolute sense, but we can't do everything. So this will not be something that we do for a long time. Okay, technical questions about different fixatives need to go onto the AMA. Where will the lifespan partners that we have already answered? I think the most important thing is to help objectively inform by example. For example, 1, pointing out the most important scientific reports regarding our idea. Yeah, definitely this will be part of it and is part of it. And okay, now that's number 2. Recommending the best medical centers in the world that deal with specific medical problems. I agree, we will definitely do this down the line. The only reason why we cannot do this from day one, or it's very difficult to do from day one, there's so many medical centers and there's so many different diseases that one could have that it's just a very, very big project, right? So, but we might start at some point, or we will, sorry, we will start at some point doing that for some things. But again, today, if someone has a problem today, there are organizations that already do this. So it would be not on our absolute top of priority list, but I think it's a meaningful thing to do in the future. And then number 3, recommending methods of treatment that when used by Tomorrow.bio members increase their chances of the best quality of cryopreservation. Yeah, that will definitely be part of it. Summarizing, reviewing things that have been proven to make sense. Is URA integration a part of the new service? We will not initially have any integrations with any smart rings or something like that. Maybe down the line, but not day one. Where are the 2025 case reports not uploaded to the site? Okay, also a question for the AMA, but they should be uploaded this week. We've been a bit delayed because we have some bigger office reorganization, but will be uploaded, I think this week. At least, maybe it's going to be next week, but very soon. If I'm not mistaken, one of the best things you can do is eat little, but no one wants to starve themselves to live longer. Yeah. To be fair, all this calorie restriction stuff has not worked out that well. It works in some animals, but in humans it has not shown that great results. So, and there's actually for intermittent fasting, just like a couple of days ago, a Cochrane review came out. So check that for at least intermittent fasting. Will you offer spa treatments? Nope. But great question. If a Cryonics organization conflicts with the health span lifespan optimization, how will you approach this? For example, in case of dementia. So this would be very much up to the individual's decision. So this is not something where we get involved in like all these medical decisions you need to decide in your family and so on. We can always tell you what is for cryopreservation, but in the end, then the person needs to decide how they want to handle these things. What's your current protocol for optimization of health span? My personal protocol, I seem to have committed to write a blog post about that, so that will come up. And since now we're through all the questions, of course, we're more than happy to talk to everybody and anybody who has feedback about this system, right? Especially people who have then tried it out initially in this waitlist a lot. So the initial parts will definitely be a lot about feedback and trying to figure out what's important and meaningful to you. And then hopefully in a year or two from now, we will sit here and say, now this is the new growth curve, and now we're on a good track to at least, let's say, 10,000 members. That at least is very much our goal that we're working with or working for. Yeah, and now, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Feel free to reach out at any point. For those of you who have not signed up for cryopreservation as well and consider it, also feel free to reach out and let us know why you haven't done it yet, or just sign up if you're already decided. Yeah, and now, without further ado, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Yeah, talk to you next time.